So today we are starting the last Olympian. It's a pretty big day for us in terms of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I one thing I did like so I saw a Titans Curse filming update, and that is that Nico is now in Camp Half-Blood. So we know that
I
they're
didn't
at
even see
least
that.
it's because I debate turning off my post notifications for that Percy's updates account, but like
Mm-hmm.
I still have them on. So I at least saw the push notification come in that said Nico's at Camp Half Blood. So they've made it that far into filming at least. We know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Leah is probably going to be doing one hell of a performance in the next coming months. Because
Mm-hmm.
from here on out, she's kidnapped.
Yep. She's not around anymore.
Oh my gosh.
Um, yeah. I hope that she can't be filming as much as she usually would be.
Yeah.
So at least she'll get like lots of her and Charlie for that matter. We'll get lots of breaks because that's not going to be any easier for Charlie to
Hmm.
play doing something like that
Yeah.
for an entire season.
Yeah, it's gonna be a crazy season. They're gonna bond a lot. And it's kind of funny
Mm-hmm.
because they're already like they put them together in that one interview, and I loved
Mm-hmm.
Leah just like side-eyeing Charlie while she's talking shit about Luke.
Yeah, and just looking at him being like, why?
Yeah. Yeah, so I know that. I'm I'm trying to remember if there's other news that was like
um,
big right now.
One thing that was interesting that came out from the D23 thing
Hmm.
is that they're doing what they called a spotlight of season 2 in December.
Hmm.
And like that verbiage is different. Like it's
Okay.
like uh usually it's like, the premiere, but like the premiere would probably be like somewhere in November since it's coming out on December 10th. And so I'm like, that's not the premiere because they wouldn't make a big deal about it if it was.
Hmm.
And so I was looking it up, and the only time I've ever seen Disney do like spotlights before is with people who made like new rides for like the end Imagineer people who like come up with technology for like the new rides or new like movies and things like that.
Hmm.
And so either way, they're doing a spotlight thing for season 2 in December, and they said that that was something that was on their schedule that they would be doing. I have no
Okay.
idea what that could be. My general guess, since it seems to be more like about technology kind of stuff, is it might be about how they did Tyson.
Oh.
And it might just be something overall, just to like make a bigger deal about it to make people remember it or like show it off to people in the industry or whatever. But either way, that was something in December that they're doing, and some of like the cast and Rick and Becky and stuff will probably be at that thing
Yeah.
in December, whenever that is. They didn't even say when it would be. I'm just obviously like obvious assumption was that it would be before December 10th when it comes out. But that's the only thing I could think of right now.
Yeah, I just feel like there was like a lot of like notifications this past like few days, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's also more just talking about the people that were already announced. So,
Yep.
yeah. So, anyways, last Olympian. And I've talked about this before, but I don't really remember this one. It's been 15 years, and I barely remember like Annabeth and Percy making out in a bubble in the ocean at the end. That's like the only thing that sticks out in my memory. And right away, I think something made sense to me with the first chapter that we read, which
Mm-hmm.
is I remember shipping Percy with Rachel, and it's so that's what we open on is Percy and Rachel are together. Paul has allowed Percy to take out his car even though he doesn't have a driver's license yet, and
Mm-hmm.
they're
Mm-hmm.
driving down the beach. And the reason I think I shipped them is because it is effortless for Percy.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with Annabeth, it's complicated and it always seems like something's going wrong, which I know isn't necessarily their connection. It's more of circumstantial, like two demigods together. Of course, there's always something happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always like him and Rachel, not in like a romantic way because he doesn't even think about it in a romantic way.
Yeah.
But like more just like him having a break, and that's like
Yes.
really what he desperately needs during this time is just someone to hang out with him and make him feel somewhat normal. And that's
Hmm.
basically what she's doing during this part, which is it like that's all he really needs right now.
Yeah.
Is something like that that reminds him of everything else in the world that's happening besides like what's going on with him. And it is like a nice person that knows about all that stuff
Hmm.
but isn't directly involved in any of it yet, and so he can like hang out with her and just relax and not have to think about it all the time, but he also doesn't have to like pretend like
Hmm.
he's a normal person around her either because she knows about everything. And so it's like a
Exactly.
nice balance to find a person like that that he can get away from it, but he doesn't have to like also pretend like he's another person around them like he usually does around normal people.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, she also gets to pretend that she's a normal person around him in some respect because of her being ridiculously rich.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fact that, because Percy talks about this a little bit in this chapter as well, that she's rich enough that her family's offering to take him on vacation to St. Thomas,
Mm-hmm.
and he says the best vacations he's ever done is, like going to the cabin in Montauk.
Yeah.
Like it's really nothing to write home about. And then like she's out there on the streets and feeding homeless people and like protesting and stuff, like basically cosplaying a not rich person. So both of them kind of get to live those identities with each other.
Mm-hmm. And when he was talking about the vacations he's been on, I'm like, yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
When people bring up literally anything at all to do anything, I'm like, I haven't done anything. I've hardly ever gone anywhere. I like my sister had a friend like that when she was in high school that was her best friend that absolutely hated me for unknown reasons, but that girl absolutely hated my guts. And but she was rich. She was one of the kids at our high school that was super rich and
Hmm.
would take my sister on vacations. Like she went to like Savannah, Georgia with them. She went to Disney World with them. She went to a couple other places. Didn't leave the country. But
Hmm.
she went on like fun vacations like that like my mom took me on told me when I graduated high school that I could go on a vacation, and she just said like just pick like a place and we can go, and I picked New York City.
Hmm.
But she did that because she's like, your sister has gone on all these trips and for the last couple years, and you haven't been able to go anywhere because we couldn't go anywhere. We
Yeah.
like hardly ever even left the state. We went to Florida when I was like 8. And that
Yeah.
was, I think, the last time we did something like that. And so I was like, yeah, it does feel like a magical world when you're talking to rich people like that can just like do things, and you're like, who are you right now? And it's just like the idea that her family was okay with Percy going because they were trying to get her to go to like a fancy rich people school.
Yes.
And it's just like you're willing to pay for an entire other person to go to like a resort vacation in like one of the Caribbean islands just to get your daughter to go to a school you like that's just ridiculous. Like we have to like save up for like over a year to go on a vacation like that. And
Yeah.
hopefully nothing happens in the year between where we have to spend the money on that instead.
Seriously, yeah. Like same here. Like most of my vacations, I've barely ever been on a plane. I've been to Hawaii twice, but like, oh my gosh, this is actually a crazy story with Hawaii. Is I went to this island, Molokai, and we went to stay at this resort. It doesn't exist anymore,
Hmm.
apparently. But like Molokai is such a small island, and what it's known for is that's where they used to have leper colonies. And so, like,
Hmm.
yeah, it was like this weird, but it was such a cool vacation because it was almost half camping. We had partial cabin, but there was also like an outside area with a hammock and stuff. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, like other than that, it's mostly been driving places in
Yep.
California, like maybe mostly camping vacations.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, vacations are one of those things. It's such a big income disparity. Like, right away, like, oh, I'm talking to somebody who has money when they talk about their vacations.
Yep.
Yeah, so as you said, Rachel's she's being bribed right now. Her family is really trying to get on her good side because they want her to go to a finishing academy. And like that's where Percy starts talking about this is the girl who goes to protests and like feeds homeless people. We're gonna put her in a finishing academy.
Yeah.
Um,
He's like,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and he really likes this idea of going on vacation with her, especially to the Caribbean, but like at the same time, he is on call for a mission. So we also get what time period we're in. We are a week out from his 16th birthday, so right on the cusp of this prophecy.
Yeah, and this is also the part when he starts talking about how this whole summer has been all of these missions that everyone has been going on, like all of these like just being attacked by a lot of different things and having to go out and see like what Luke is doing and to come back and so there hasn't been it's like him going off doing those missions and then him coming back and like trying to hang out with Rachel so he doesn't lose his mind. But he
Hmm.
can't like go to a different on vacation like that. And
Yeah.
like I of course I thought this so much when reading this chapter. I'm just going to keep our these chapters and keep reading as we read the book. I'll just keep thinking about it. He's 15.
Hmm.
He's not even 16 yet. He's this is like the summer before his sophomore year of high school. And he's sitting there being like, I can't go on vacation because I can't leave because if I do, people are going to die when I'm gone. And
Hmm.
it's just like, you're a child. You should not be thinking about that kind of stuff. You should be able to leave and just go on vacation with one of your high school friends that is offering you to go for free. That never happens. Like there's a couple times when I went on little vacations, like camping with friends and stuff that I had, and those felt like really exciting. And I didn't even
Yeah.
leave like the area of Wisconsin that I live in, much less like leaving for good in that sort of way for a long time, leaving like the continental U.S. But it's just one of those things. Like, yeah, he can't go.
Yeah.
It's really nice. It's really great of her to ask and to want him to go. But I also, but also, I feel like she wanted him to go because she's doing some weird, like, romantic thing that he would never ever pick up on.
Yeah. So I mean, he's sort of there's little hints of him picking up on it, like that we get throughout his narrative, and little hints of him like, and maybe that wouldn't be so bad if I like dated her. But it's kind of sad because he's so stuck on like this prophecy is about to happen. I'm on call for missions. Monsters attack me left and right. I can't date. Like that's
Yeah.
basically what's holding him back from really considering it.
Yeah, and I think she's almost like a fantasy thing of like
Yes.
she's a nice girl, but I don't think he actually fully believes that she would actually be interested in him until she literally asks him because
Hmm.
he's very surprised. During
Yeah.
this part, she basically just asks him like, will you just like kiss me now? And he's like, what? That's basically his reaction is like, what? And just like stutters and says nothing. And because he generally doesn't expect anyone to feel like that about him. Like, even if
Yeah.
he's thinking, like, yeah, talking to Rachel is really nice because there's none of the complications that I have with everyone else that I would talk to or with Annabeth or anything. Things having gotten like insanely just horrible, like with the stuff with Luke, like there is with her. But I don't think he ever actually took it seriously or
Yeah.
anything like that because he's very surprised when she
Yes.
says that and it's just like no he's basically about to say like no, but it's also just like what do you he's about to ask like are you sure about that?
Yeah. So, what he tells himself here is, the more serious things got at camp, the more I found myself needing to call Rachel up to get away, for some breathing room. Just needed to remind myself that the mortal world was still out there, away from all the monsters using me as their personal punching bag. And then, yeah, she asks, like, she basically hints she wants him to kiss her. And he says, I felt like one of Apollo's sacred cows, slow, dumb, and bright red. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's when he acknowledges, like, okay, I've thought about it, but like, I can't really
No.
think about it.
Yeah, I do like that little bit of it's been about a year since
Hmm.
a little over a year since the end of Battle of the Labyrinth, and I do like that he now like calls her and to go hang out with her when he needs time away, because during his birthday party at at the end of Bad the Labyrinth, he was thinking about wanting that he wanted Rachel at his party, but he didn't call her, and he didn't even know why he didn't call her. He just felt like he wasn't allowed or something, or that it would be like a bad thing to invite her. And so I'm glad like that in the year since then he got to the point where he realized like no, I am allowed to just hang out with somebody. Got to the point where he realized like no, I am allowed to just hang out with somebody who
Hmm.
just is a nice person and makes me feel good.
Yeah.
So that little thing, I was like, oh, I'm glad that you figured that out in the last year or so, that it's okay that you can hang out with her, even if she does end up hitting on you and you're very confused by that.
Yes. Um, let's see. So they're interrupted at this point before he can really even consider kissing her by Blackjack landing on the hood of the car. And
Hmm.
he takes a second. He at first he's talking to Blackjack. He's like, "What are you doing here?" And then he notices, oh, there's a person on him, and it's Charlie Beckendorf.
Hmm.
And so he knows this point. Like, yes, this is the on call. I've been waiting for this mission to come up. And so the mission that they're going on is they have some Greek fire bombs, and it's kind of the thing that Charlie has been known for now. With like he took out a, what was it, a tour bus full of monsters with
Hmm.
a Greek firebomb, and so he has these explosives. They know the queen, or sorry, I always want to say Queen Andromeda because I feel like ships are usually queens. But the
Hmm.
Princess Andromeda is pulling up to close to Camp Half Blood again, and so they're going to try to ambush it and put these Greek fire bombs on it to slow it down, or slow down the monsters that are on it at least.
Hmm. Yeah, because
Yeah.
the main thing about this whole thing, that is like just an important point to point out of kind of like the stakes of this whole thing,
Hmm.
is that in we saw where the Princess Andromeda was at the end of Titan's Curse, that it was like below them when they were in San Francisco. And then when they're in Battle of the Labyrinth, they're talking about how the ship is like traveling all the way down to like the Panama Canal and then coming back up. And
Hmm.
so the ship has been traveling all that way to get here, to
Hmm.
get to camp, to kill everyone again. And so it's like they have to stop this ship somehow, because if
Hmm.
they don't, they're just going to wipe out camp again, or at least try. Except it
Yeah.
would probably be more successful this time because there's a lot more things on the ship now. But
Yeah.
that's like the stakes of what they're doing right now. Is okay. We have to go and like try to stop this before we all die. So it's like okay, that's not really a choice. Like they have to go. I will say one like cute part during this thing was when Blackjack is on like the hood of the car,
Hmm.
and he's thinking like Paul will never let me borrow his car ever again. I
Yeah.
know that's not true because one thing that I know for sure is that the part in Trials of Apollo when he drives like human Apollo to Camp Half Blood, he's driving that car. He's driving Paul's Prius car again.
Hmm.
And it gets like ruined by magical things again. But I'm like
Oh
Paul
gosh.
would never. Paul is
Yeah.
the best. He
He
would
just has
never.
to have good insurance at this
Yeah,
point.
he would never be like, "Yes, step sweetheart, stepson, you're not allowed to drive my car ever again." No, no,
Hmm.
no. But it was just like cute to see him think like he's never going to let me do this again. I'm like, I know that's not true because Paul's the best. So I
Yeah.
just have to point that out because Paul is the best. Um,
Yes.
he's absolutely the best. It makes me excited to imagine he might show up in Titan's Curse somewhere, like the show.
Yeah.
Um, that would be really great just to see
Yeah.
him.
They might not cast him that early just for,
No, I just want to
yeah.
project all of
Yeah.
my dad problems onto him.
Exactly. And I want to believe that Paul is a self-insert for Rick. I really do.
Yeah. He's an English teacher.
Yes.
He's a high school English teacher.
Hmm.
Who else is he supposed to be?
Good point. Good point. I mean, well, Chiron is the obvious one, but like,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, so they come up upon the Princess Andromeda. They're riding on Blackjack. And so Percy tells him to set them down. And he, of course, Blackjack hates seeing the ship coming because that's where Percy first rescued him from.
Hmm.
Um, and he tells him, don't wait for us. We'll like get ourselves out." and Blackjack's hesitant to leave, but he does end up leaving them. So we find out Selena Beauregard has been dating him, but we read that in some of the side stories. So
Mm-hmm.
presumably after they went to that, was it a campfire together? They
Mm-hmm.
ended up dating for a bit. And he says, we do know, even with all of the dangerous missions, Beckendorf had been happier this summer than I'd ever seen him. So, like, he's really happy he's finally with Selena. Selena is pretty happy to be with him, from what we know, too. And it's,
Yeah.
yeah,
And he's just
there's,
like, he's actually like an
yeah,
adult. Like he's 18.
he's gonna go to
He's a
college.
Yeah, he's about to go to NYU. Like he is like closest that anyone at camp really that we know of at least has gotten to like, you know, being
Yeah.
able to live their own life and like reach adulthood and be able to do their own thing.
Yeah, so it looks like, okay, they're heading towards the engine room. There's telekines on the way, and they start arguing because they can kind of smell them, but like they end up
Hmm.
sliding past them while they're having this argument before they really decide. And that's when they get to the engine room, and they start setting up some of the bombs.
We just read the Demigod Diary story of Luke's diary, so we know how powerful Greek fire is because that's
Yes.
also in that story. And so it's it just takes everything out once you use it.
Yeah. So, let's see. As they're setting them up, though, they we find out the detonator is a watch that Beckendorf is wearing,
Hmm.
but there's no delay in when he detonates it to when it goes off. So they have
Yeah.
to set him up, get off, and then detonate it.
Yeah. The general plan they have is like sneak in, set up like the Greek fire bombs basically in the engine room,
Hmm.
and then sneak back off the ship, jump off, and be far enough away where they can set the bombs off and it won't like take them out too. And then like just have Percy keep them safe underwater, and then and he can bring Charlie with him back to like land and they'll be fine. Like that was the
Yeah.
original plan.
Yeah, but then they start hearing footsteps, and it sounds like there is a bunch of monsters headed their direction. And so Percy says he's going to distract them, and he decides, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to keep these monsters away from the engine room as long as possible for him.
Hmm.
Um, One thing as he's leading away this group of monsters that he mentions is back on my first visit to the Princess Andromeda, my old enemy Luke had kept some dazed tourists on board for show, shrouded in mist, so they didn't realize they were on a monster-infested ship. Now I didn't see any sign of tourists. I hated to think what happened to them, but I kind of doubted they'd been allowed to go home with their bingo winnings. So
Yeah.
this cruise ship that once it still looked kind I mean it kind of resembled a cruise ship, but they were zombie-ish and there were monsters on board. Now it's just completely monsters, so all of the amenities of the cruise ship are still there, but there's no people.
Yeah.
um
I like
Very
the little
otherworldly.
tidbits that Rick wrote into this chapter of Percy like having little like flashbacks to when he was on
Yes.
there on the Sea of when in Sea of Monsters because it just kind of shows like how far they progressed in the story and how serious things are. And I do like that he brought that up because besides him right there, I think we're the only other people that have ever even remembered like what happened to those people? Like why were they on the ship? What did they do with them? They just, and now we know. I remember at the time when we first read Sea of Monsters and brought it up even a couple months ago when the trailer came out, we were like, what? Yeah, what happened to them? Like, they never really say, but like, you can't imagine they just like didn't die in a horrible, painful way. And now we know for sure that they're just gone.
Yeah.
They're just gone. And who knows who those people were? Like, their families are probably out there and have no idea what happened to them because they probably
Yeah.
just left to go on a cruise and never came back.
Yeah, the mist is probably projecting some sort of story about like a sunken cruise ship.
Hmm.
um so um he reaches the promenade, I love that Rick gives us the definition for those of us who've never been on a cruise ship. A big
Hmm.
shopping mall that took up the whole middle of the ship. And in the middle of the courtyard there is a giant crab. Now, this giant crab is the one that later becomes the constellation Cancer.
Oh.
And I did a video on this back. I tried to do all of the constellations and I stopped
Hmm.
before I got to all of them. But with Cancer, so the crab was kind of a helper of the Hydra, but in the same sense of like having a level one enemy with a boss. You know, it doesn't really do much. Hercules smashes it and then it's
Hmm.
gone. But it was there, it was trying to help, and for its efforts, Hera gave it a constellation because she's like, "You made my stepson's life harder. Good
Thank
job."
you.
Yes. Um, so, I mean, yeah, but it's kind of interesting because Heracles is always like, he's definitely the larger than life hero of Greek
Hmm.
mythology, and so I do love that Rick's giving us more of like, well, a giant crab would actually be super fucking terrifying.
Yeah, it's a
So
giant fucking crab. Like,
here's a 15-year-old stuck in a confined space with it.
hmm. And he's just like trying to run away from it, and then it won't leave him alone. But it
Yes.
that would be it's one of those things that's like scary enough to be scary, but also something that he could take care of once he figures out what the heck is even happening right now. Besides, like, why is there a gigantic crab on this ship?
Yeah.
Basically.
And Percy's thinking, I have to act fast because if he doesn't, he's going to be completely cut off by both the monsters and the crabs,
Hmm.
and the crab. So what he remembers is something that Paul taught him, and this made me, it just made me so happy that he's already all of the dad vibes. So they went to Montauk, and Paul took him crabbing, and he showed him on the crabs where they have a chink in the armor, like a
Hmm.
weak spot. And so he decides, I'm gonna look for that spot on this crab, and he finds this opening. He sprays water at it, which of course it's a crab. It doesn't do anything to it, but it gives him that opening to jab Riptide into that chink, and then it says it dissolves, but the shell was left behind. And I
That's a
do
big
love
shell.
that, but of course, poor Percy is not going to be able to get his souvenir because he has to
Mm.
keep running. First, they run into a demigod. They run into
Yeah, the
what looks
sweetheart.
to be a 12-year-old demigod. And Percy, this is where I was thinking to myself, because everybody talks about the characters Hamartia, their fatal flaw, their missing of the mark, and for Annabeth it's hubris. For Percy, a lot of people will say his loyalty, but I don't necessarily. Loyalty isn't the right word for it. I think we get a flavor of what it is here, because when he looks at this kid who's like shouting that he's going into battle for Kronos, but seems scared, he says he couldn't have been more than 12, about the same age I was when I first arrived at Camp Half Blood, and very quickly decides I'm not going to hurt him. And so he basically disarms him and then says, "Get off this ship. Get all of the demigods you can and get off this ship."
Yeah.
And he kind of realizes to himself too that because this kid is so young, chances are his first encounter with what he actually is as a demigod was like this, Kronos' side of the army too.
Yeah. He's a baby. There's no way when you're 12 years old that you actually understand like the
Hmm.
choice that you're really making. I
Yeah.
do know that one of the stories in Demigod Diaries, I think that we didn't read because it's set after this book is done, is
Hmm.
like a kid that was on like Luke's side and like what he's thinking about everything that happened after everything's over.
Hmm.
So Rick does write another story from that kind of perspective, but I'm really glad that he put a character like that in just because yeah, like Luke has been convincing literal children to join him knowing that they're probably going to die and also lying to them and knowing that they don't have any real idea you're too young at that age to like fully grasp what he's even saying or like the consequences of what you're doing. You just don't know. And that is true about like every sort of like conflict thing you can imagine and from like the history of time. There's always people that end up getting swept up in it that don't really know what's going on
Hmm.
because they're being manipulated, because they're too young or whatever. Um, and I just love Percy for telling him to like get off the ship even though he knows he's not supposed to because they're trying to surprise them by like blowing up the ship and ambushing them because that's the only way it's going to work. And he just told this like tiny little child to get off the ship because it's not going to be around for much longer. But it's like it's Percy. He
Hmm.
has to do that. And because that 12-year-old is a victim. He has no idea what he's doing.
Yeah.
And it's just like the thing from before we get to like the when Luke shows up that I did want to like almost just like put a reminder in for why this book is like makes me cry a lot is that we talked about the last episode that we did, how Percy hates fighting, or like he hates being like violent. He doesn't like being scary. He
Hmm.
hates like throwing around the whole like I'm the son of Poseidon like kind of stuff. Even though like the fandom generally talks about him that way, he actually hates doing that. Somebody
Yeah.
Mr. Meadow, who's one of he's great, commented on on that video mentioning the thing in Battle of the Labyrinth when he's talking to the water nereid, the nymph, when they're in the farm, and
Yeah.
he realizes that she's scared of him, and he immediately just like stops, and
Yeah.
he's like, I don't want to be a bully. That's like Percy all the time, and so he hates fights. He hates having to do like these scary things, and that is literally all this book is.
Hmm.
This entire book is a nonstop battle where he has to do things like that all the time because if he doesn't do that, him and everybody he loves is going to die. And that's why
Yeah.
this book is so hard, is because he hates this. And like, I just want people to keep that in mind as we go through this. He hates this. He
Yeah.
hates every single second of this. And him trying to tell that 12-year-old to get as many demigods off the ship, even if they don't like him, he doesn't want them to die. Even
Hmm.
if they are on Luke's side, he's trying anything to try to get them to not die. Like, I forget, when he's running up there, there's a part we're going to get to where he, like, uses his powers to, like, tip the ship over. And he's thinking when he's doing that, that he's doing that in the hopes that he's thinking in his head, like, demigods get off the ship. Like,
Hmm.
as many demigods, he's just trying to delay as long as possible to save them, even if they hate his guts
Yeah.
because he just doesn't want to do this. And that's like the main thing about this book of why it's so hard. It's like so sad to read is that he is doing these things, but if you know him as a character, you know that he hates every single second of
Hmm.
what he is doing. And it just gets worse the further it goes on. And
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes people want to imagine him as like a big bad like superhero guy, but that's not him.
Yeah.
And it just makes this kind of stuff when he is doing these like crazy moves during this book. It is amazing some of the things that he does eventually, but it is just like always upsetting because you know that he's the last person on the planet that in this general world even that would want to
Hmm.
do something like that.
Yeah. So they do run into Kronos right after that, and let's see. So, I mean, and we go back and forth between calling him Luke and Kronos from here on out because he's
Yeah.
both. Like he's
Mhm.
simultaneously both. So
Mhm.
Percy first says Luke stood on the balcony, and then he's like he looked like a normal college age guy, and it wouldn't be until you saw gold eyes that you're like, oh wait, that's not Luke anymore.
Mhm.
Um, and so Chronos slash Luke says, we've been expecting you for days. And basically, we find out here that they were tipped off somehow. And they knew exactly what was going to happen. They knew they were going to come and place explosives on the ship. And so Yeah, it was more just a matter of when they were going to come.
Hmm.
Let's see. And Percy does realize that, like, during the monster attack that he just kind of tried to fight off to give Beckendorf more time, that they had to have been in position for that to all go down.
Yeah, they came down there way too fast for
Mhm.
them not to have an idea that they were going to show up.
Percy's noticing here too that like the Luke Chronos shift hasn't fully completed here because he says, like he notices his voice changing, and
Hmm.
while he's thinking this to himself, he also says to himself, Luke had been twisted and evil long before Chronos possessed him. Just to give like a character of who he thinks Luke is.
Thanks, Rick.
Yep. Let's see. So because he's trapped in this situation with them right in front of him, he's like, well, I have to fight them eventually in the end anyway,
Yeah.
so maybe this is it. It's a week before my birthday. Like, I guess it's going down. And so he does charge him, but then Kronos uses the time power thing where it
Hmm.
suddenly feels like sludge. It feels like he's moving through molasses and he like can't really get to him and do what he needs to do.
Hmm.
Um, then he decides he needs to somehow use the water. And I do love that in these intro like chapters we're getting a little bit more of a feel for his powers in some
Hmm.
of the things that happen here. Um, Similar to when he caused the explosion in Mount St. Helens, he has like a gut-wrenching pain while he makes this water. It throws the ship off, and it says 4,000 gallons of salt water surged out of the swimming pool, dousing me and Kronos and everyone on the deck. The water revitalized me, breaking the time spell, and I lunged forward. So the water power is able to break the Kronos spell. I thought that was pretty
Hmm.
cool. I struck at Kronos, but I was still too slow. I made the mistake of looking at his face, Luke's face, a guy who was once my friend. As much as I hated him, it was hard to kill him. And that's where I was like, this is why I think it's his fatal flaw, more just that he has trouble with like as you said being scary is one way to put it, but like he really doesn't like the idea of hurting people. Like
Yeah, he's not
yeah.
violent. That's like the thing about him is he's not a violent person.
Hmm.
If he had like a choice, like an actual choice in the
Yeah.
matter, he wouldn't be doing these things. Like he's terrified fighting Luke right now. He's terrified.
Hmm.
And he has to do it, and so he's trying to like psych himself up into doing it. But one of the things about Percy fighting that Walker even mentioned, that how they figure out how to do like his choreography versus everyone else.
Yeah.
He talked about things that we've talked about before too, that Percy is very like, impulsive when he's fighting, that he kind of waits until he just kind of is intuitive in that way. He doesn't have like a set plan. He just kind of does what he thinks he should do in that moment. And it is hard for someone like Walker who's playing him to figure out how to do that choreography, to like wait until the last possible second to do something like that so it comes across like that on screen. But
Hmm.
he doesn't have a fighting style because he doesn't want to.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't want to. He doesn't even want to. We didn't read The Lightning Thief when we first started because I didn't want to read him being gaslit and really sad at camp in the beginning of the book. But he learns how to fight from Luke, but he doesn't really want to do that either. And like the
Hmm.
first book, like they have that scene on the show where he's arguing with Luke, and he's like, why am I even learning how to do this kind of stuff doesn't matter. And people like Luke and Clarice have a very like set fighting style because they like it. They
Hmm.
like fighting. They like they like feeling that like rush when they're fighting somebody and figuring out how they can beat them. That's why they have a
Yeah.
fighting style. He doesn't have a fighting style because he doesn't want to do it. And
Hmm.
so if you don't want to fight, but you're forced to sometimes when people are going to kill you if you don't, you just kind of wing it. And that's just him all the time. He never has a fighting style ever because he doesn't want to do it.
Hmm.
He doesn't want to hurt people. but he's like
Yeah.
being he's somehow ended up being the prophecy kid, the one kid that's in this role that doesn't want to do this stuff is the one that ends up having to do it the most. But he doesn't want to. That's his whole thing. He would rather be doing literally anything else. He doesn't want to be violent. And so I can't I that's why I'm like what is that's not a flaw. Like I can never think that that's a flaw, that
It's
he's
not a
just
flaw, but
has
yeah.
empathy for people. Like when you like that's like the thing where I feel weird about it is like, yeah, if you see a 12-year-old that's been like gas groomed, literally groomed by Luke to be on this ship, you should tell him to leave and you should try to do things so other kids can get off of the ship because they shouldn't be taken down with Luke. And he's just trying to delay things here too. Um,
Mhm.
as long as he possibly can for everybody else involved, including himself, especially for Beckendorf and all the other demigods on the ship. Like that's not a flaw. To like maybe in this world it's seen as a
Yeah, it's
flaw.
not a personality flaw, but what I mean by it being his fatal flaw is more just it is the area where it's easiest to get him. And most
Mm-hmm.
people would just call that an extension of loyalty, but the thing is this doesn't just extend to people he likes
Mm-hmm.
because he just said that about Luke. He was like it's hard to think about killing him because he was my friend at one point.
Yeah.
Like
I
and
like that they brought like Rick makes him be the one doing this stuff because
mhm,
he never gets to the point where hurting people like that or killing them is easy for him. It's
yes.
always really hard. That's why at the end of all of this, I'm always relieved that he isn't the one that actually does it because I don't know if he would have recovered from actually having to like stab Luke to death. I'm always so relieved that he didn't have to actually do that,
Yeah.
because that would have been super duper hard for him. And thank God he didn't actually have to. But but at this point, he's thinking that he's gonna have to. Um, but either way, it's just yeah. In this sort of world where he's supposed to be like the prophecy kid and the hero
Mhm.
guy and killing bitches and taking names and whatever, it is a flaw for him to be like that. But it also is the thing that makes him why people are all so obsessed with him as a character
Exactly.
is
Yeah.
that he is in all of these roles, but consistently throughout all of the Percy Jackson books, he is always fighting against that. He's always
Mhm.
fighting against having the role that they want him to be in and finding a way for him to do it in a way that fits his personality more. He never
Mhm.
fits like any of the molds that people, even the other campers, want him to be in because he's just not that person. And that's like why I really like his character in these books, especially with this sort of stuff, is that he is consistent in that he never gives up on the idea that I'm not going to do this. He's always trying to
Mhm.
fight against becoming like a more emotionless person that can just take somebody out without thinking about it. And it just makes me feel good that even the other characters in this series, when they're like growing up, that they have somebody like him that feels like that about this kind of stuff
Mhm.
as like their person to look up to instead of anyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously, especially after Luke leaves.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, this back and forth fight. At one point, Percy kicks Kronos in the chest, and he says it feels heavier than it should have felt for Luke. It feels like
Mm-hmm.
kicking a refrigerator, which I thought was pretty interesting. But he's dodging Kronos' scythe here, and the one thing he has heard about it is one touch, the blade will sever your soul from your body. Um, but at one point he does get nicked. And even just that nick, he felt like it was not only his blood, he said, I could feel my strength, my will, my identity draining away. And so this is kind of where he is stuck in a bad situation because
Mm-hmm.
having been nicked by this scythe, he just can't fight anymore. There's no way he could.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Kronos says, "Ashamed to kill you now. Before the final plan unfolds, I would have loved to see the terror in your eyes when you realize how I will destroy Olympus." And Percy replies back, "You'll never get this boat to Manhattan." Um, and at that point, they call in Ethan.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's like, "Oh, what do you think's gonna happen?" And Ethan has Beckendorf.
Mm-hmm.
And so Percy, of course, yells no. He's really like distraught that this has happened. He notices Beckendorf is missing all of his armor and that his shirt is nearly torn off, but he's still wearing the watch.
Mm-hmm.
And so Percy realizes that there's still hope somewhat here, especially because he asks Ethan, like, where did you, like, tell us where you found him? Like, or Kronos asks Ethan that. And, like, Ethan says, he didn't set the explosives because he was heading in the direction. And that Beckendorf had told them, like, I'm heading to the engine room.
Mm-hmm.
And as we know, he was already there. They had already, like, Percy placed some of the Greek fire bombs himself,
Mm-hmm.
so they were already there. And Percy slowly comes to realize Beckendorf had fooled them. That when he realized he was going to get captured, he started making it look like he was coming from the other way and tricked them.
Mm-hmm.
And they also, like, he has something in his bag, even though all of the bombs are in the engine room now. And so that's the other reason why Ethan kind of believed him when he was like, oh, I'm heading to the engine room. But Kronos is like, open the bag, let's see what he has. And it turns out it's just cans of peaches.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they realize, shoot, we gotta go check the engine room. Now,
Yeah, and Kronos
yeah,
Kronos slash Luke is like screaming at them,
yes,
screaming at Ethan, and I like this little input of like what it would be like for them actually to be like
yes.
on Kronos' side. Like he's not any better than anyone else. He's actually worse than the gods because at least Zeus isn't there literally like screaming in your ear all the
Oh my
time,
gosh, right?
like he is. But it just I love this part because I love Charlie, and that
Yeah,
he was able to figure out a plan to, and made it believable enough. Like fought them like he was trying to get to the engine room, like he hadn't gotten there before. There's no reason why they wouldn't have thought that unless you're somebody like Luke slash Kronos who's overthinking everything and doesn't trust anyone. But he sold it really well because I
yeah,
mean, he fought them so hard that they ripped his shirt off basically
pretty
because
much.
he was fighting them so hard. Like that's a very believable way to like make it seem like you didn't get your plan to go yet.
Yeah,
I just really like that. He's an
yeah.
Hephaestus kid. They're smart.
I totally forgot too. The before they see that it's just a can of peaches, one of the monsters drops the bag, and that should have blown up the whole ship if they
And they're
were
like,
still in
wait a
there.
second.
Yeah. Um. So, anyways, Percy and Beckendorf start trying to have a conversation. Beckendorf reminds him, like, we have no delay time between when this gets detonated and, like, basically they're gonna end up finding these. So, Beckendorf just mouths to him at some point, go. And, oh, almost forgot this one. Hold on. We find out that the mole may have a matching silver bracelet with a scythe charm because, like, when they're telling Percy, we knew about your plan, there's a mole, they show him this bracelet.
Hmm.
So, anyways, he finds out that was their communication device for it. And then Beckendorf mouths go. Percy's like, I don't want to leave you, of course, but he kind of realizes there's not really another choice. So it says he threw his sword at like a javelin at Kronos, knowing because its magical sword is going to come back to him anyway. Bounced off his chest, but it did startle him. I pushed through a crowd of monsters and jumped off the side of the ship towards the water, 100 feet below. And then he starts like zooming out of the way, and then the ship explodes, and he blacks out and sinks to the bottom of the sea.
Yeah.
That was so sad. And I feel like because we read the like story about Capture the Flag and Beckendorf, it's so much sadder knowing like there's so many things that Rick sets up to make this death hit you so hard, even though
Yeah.
it's one chapter in. He's got a new relationship. He's finally super happy about it. He's about to go off to NYU.
Hmm.
He has suddenly made a name for himself among other demigods this summer doing missions. Everybody, like, people are scared of him because he's a big dude. Like,
Hmm.
so much about him that he sets you up to be like, this is a great guy. Just to, like, right at the last
Yeah,
second
that's
of
why I
that
was like,
chapter.
we have to read those short stories
Yes.
before we start this because I knew it was in the first chapter because I remember that about this book that it's the first chapter. Somebody
Yes.
dies in this horribly sad way, and you're just like, oh my god. And it's just like setting up like what this book is going to be like. Like they're not wasting any time.
Hmm.
It's just we're in it now, and that's it. And it's horribly sad that he died like that. Like, um, Percy really likes Beckendorf.
Hmm.
Like you can tell in the short story, he looks up to him. He's 2 years older than him. He, even during this part, he's talking about him like, I want to be like him one day.
Yeah.
And he cares a lot about him. He's like kind of like a leader. Like during Battle of the Labyrinth, he talks about trying to find Beckendorf and like that Beckendorf is helping him after the whole battle is over to help organize stuff at camp when everybody's hurt. Like literally everybody is hurt. And even in Titan's Curse, when the whole thing with Thalia happens, when she electrocutes him, he's like there for that and is like around. He's always kind of like this older person, and this is why like people are so um like upset, I guess, about the idea of him not being in other seasons. And this is why I kept saying like nothing can ruin his story.
Yeah.
Nothing, absolutely nothing. Even if they don't show Beckendorf until the first episode of season 5, there is no way that this will happen to him and people will not be absolutely destroyed. Because and it gets worse as it goes on, like as these chapters go on, like seeing everybody else's reaction and how Percy feels about it. Um, but there's no possible way that the TV show can mess this up. It is not possible because this is so awful. It is
Hmm.
awful that they're sitting there having to like sit there and talk to each other without talking before Kronos realizes that the watch is something.
Yes.
Because they're sitting there just having like the idea that Percy has to decide whether to stay there or to jump off the ship, knowing that he's probably going to die because he's the one that would bring Charlie to safety. He's the one with water powers. So it's like there's no good answer here. That's what like the stakes of it all is, that if he stays on the ship, he dies, and there's no guarantee that they don't know what's going to happen. Like they have to stop the ship from getting to land because if it gets to land, it's going to kill everybody for good at
Yeah.
camp, like once and for all. And so they can't let the ship get to land, and this is the only way they have to do it. And so he has to leave him behind. Percy does not know how to handle that, like leaving somebody behind. And
Hmm.
this is why I say that this book is full of Patroclus Achilles scenarios, because this is the first one
Hmm.
where Charlie does this. He sacrifices himself and is like, "No, I can do this. I'm going to do this." Like Percy, if he had like the fatal flaw of like loyalty and stuff, he would have tried to like grab the watch from Charlie or something and try to do it himself and like push Charlie off of the ship or something like that. He would have done something more that would have given away the plan and like kind of ruined it. That's why I don't think that that's actually his fatal flaw, because he doesn't do that. He does leave him behind, but it's just like just so sad. Like it just makes me want to cry every time I think about it, because it's just so sad that he has to do that, that Charlie has to do that, and you're like, God, fuck you, Luke. That you're
Yeah.
like forcing these kids to do things like this. And this is the first chapter. Like we've hardly even gotten started, and he's already forced them to like Percy is a child. He
Hmm.
should not be knowing now forever. That's why that short story where he was like, I don't regret any deaths. And I was like, nope, that's never going to happen again. This is just one of them. But there's a bunch of other ones in this book. And I was like, that's never going to be him ever again. Beckendorf is one of those that he never gets over. It
Yeah.
always bothers him because it's just one of those ones that thinks, like, if I would have fought something a little bit different, would he still be alive? Would if we did something a little bit different, would we have been able to like do everything before they realized that we were there? It's just one of those like maddening things for you to always second guess and think of like he should have been able to live his life. Like Charlie should have been able to live his life. He shouldn't have
Yeah.
died here, but his death is like the thing that makes everything happen in this book. Everything happens after this because of him dying this way. It just is like a runaway train that nobody can stop because these kids actually care about each other. And
Hmm.
it that's why it happens in the first book, in the first chapter. Like Rick right away just like tells you the kind of stakes in this book, and it just like sets everything off from this point
Yeah.
on. Um, that's why I keep trying to tell people that are worried about the show there's no possible way that Beckendorf's character won't get what he deserves. There's no way. There's no way.
Yeah.
He's written way too importantly in this book for it ever not to be. Everything that happens in this book happens because of him and him sacrificing himself the way that he does and the fact that people care about him so much that
Hmm.
they react to it the way that they do. There's no way that you would ever have to worry about that with him.
Yeah.
You don't need like multiple you don't need 3 seasons of build up for him to have that kind of effect on people. God. I just
Yeah.
remember the first time I read this book and I didn't know that this happened that I was shocked. I was absolute like completely shocked that he died
Hmm.
because it's just usually in books like this it takes longer for deaths and stuff to happen, and I did not even imagine that he would die like that. And I was like absolutely like I remember just like staring at like the book for a while before like I kept reading. And I kept reading because I was like wanting to believe he could somehow still be alive even though I didn't think he was, because I was just like
Hmm.
how is he dead like that? How did he It's the first chapter.
Yeah.
How is somebody already dead? Like that usually didn't happen until the very end.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't for the last few books. I didn't say the chapter name for that one. That was I Go Cruising with Explosives. For
Yeah.
chapter two, it's I Meet Some Fishy Relatives. So he has a dream after he passes out, and he sees Mount Orthus, and he notices some of the Titans talking. So one of them, he doesn't know the name. He says this Titan was dressed in gold robes with golden eyes like Kronos. My first thought being Helios, especially when he says he reminded me of Apollo, god of the sun, except the Titan's light was harsher and his expression crueler. So at first, Helios was the first person that came to mind. But then in some versions, Helios's dad is Hyperion, who is Titan, god of heavenly light. And at one point, the Elder Titans were posted at 4 quarters of the world, those being Koios, Kroios, Hyperion, and Iapetus. And we've already seen Iapetus in the short story that we read before. So that's why I'm like, I think this might be Hyperion that he's talking about.
Oh, they're talking
Uh,
about the main thing from this part was them referencing that there's like
yeah,
other things that will like get in the way of the demigods, just to like make him
yeah,
realize that like there's other things that they don't even know about that are being sent their
yes.
way.
Okay, yeah. So mark my words, in a few days' time, Olympus will be in ruins, and we'll meet here again to celebrate the dawn of the sixth age. Is Nico in his dream? And
Yeah.
Nico looks directly at him, which my first thought was, does Nico know how to do that? That's kind of cool.
Mhm.
Um, and so Nico looks at him and says, "You see, Percy, you're running out of time. Do you really think you can beat them without my plan?" And he wakes up and realizes that he's on the ocean floor. Yeah.
Mhm.
So he wakes up to a deep voice. What I thought was interesting is the way it's described is my head felt like it had been microwaved in aluminum. Oh, wait, sorry, no, that's not the description of the voice. It's his voice sounded wrong. I could hear Tyson, but it was more like I was hearing vibrations inside my skull, not the regular sounds. And it's because they're underwater. So
Mhm.
he gets woken up by Tyson. At first thinks he's Beckendorf, but no. Um, And Tyson's, of course, happy. First thing he says is, "Yay, your brain works." I laughed so hard at that. Um, but yeah, so he's kind of realizing what happened, and he asks, "Where are we?" Realizes he's in his dad's palace, and it says his arm and his leg wounds have healed because he got shot in the leg while he was getting away. I think I forgot to mention
Hmm.
that. And just being in the ocean was enough for that to happen, but he still felt really, really like he was healing.
Hmm.
And so he finds out from Tyson. They found him sinking in the water last night. He asks him what happened to the Princess Andromeda. Tyson says, "Went kaboom." Um, they didn't find any sign of Beckendorf, unfortunately. And Percy knows, he says, "I knew in my gut he was dead. He'd sacrificed himself to take out the Princess Andromeda, and I had abandoned him." Um,
Sweetheart.
yeah.
Yeah, that part I was like, oh my god. That's
So,
the yeah. That he thinks
yeah.
that he abandoned him there.
It's like there really was nothing you could have done there.
No,
Um,
sweetheart. You would have died too.
but yeah, they're not able to have this conversation for long because war is happening underwater too. And so there's like distant blasts happening, green light shooting out from all over, some from Poseidon's Triton and stuff. So basically, the palace is beautiful, but at the moment is literally getting destroyed in front of Percy's face.
One
Merman
thing I thought was
warriors,
interesting
yeah.
during this part too that Tyson says is that he's stuck like in the armory, like fixing broken weapons.
Yes,
And he's
Poseidon will
obviously
not let
like
him
not happy
fight.
about that. And Percy is like, yeah, why are you in the
Yeah.
armory and not helping? That's weird. I like this little storyline thing that happens with that.
Yeah, yeah. It comes back into play too later. Let's see. So I'm gonna skip ahead to when they get to, they're
Poseidon.
looking for Poseidon, and they get to the deck where they're all kind of like standing around a battle strategy thing. Let's see. So one guy looked like a merman with his two fish tails instead of one. His skin was green, his armor studded with pearls, his black hair tied in a ponytail. He looked young, though it's hard to tell with non-humans. That's Triton.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and let's see. Standing next to him was an old man with bushy white beard and gray hair. I'm actually not sure who that's supposed to be. Um, or actually,
That's
maybe that's supposed to be Poseidon, right?
that's
Yeah.
Poseidon.
Okay, yeah. So it caught me off guard too, and they say it caught Percy off guard. The way Poseidon explains his appearance having changed so much from being the guy in Bermuda shorts is
Mm-hmm.
because his appearance reflects what's happening in his realm. And so because there's all this chaos happening, he looks like an old man. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That caught me off too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see. And there was a beautiful woman in green armor with flowing black hair and strange little horns like crab claws. So that's Amphitrite,
Mm-hmm.
the queen of the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Now, two things that they name that are like his little generals here, Delphin. That is a dolphin-shaped demon that Poseidon uses. And then Plaimon, it says that was a like lesser god, and he came to the aid of sailors in distress. So those are kind of interesting people to choose to be the main ones. Delphin, we're gonna get back to because once Percy finds out that that was Amphitrite, his stepmommy that he was looking at, um, so she was promised to Poseidon, and she didn't want to marry him, so she hid him away, or she hid away with Atlas. And now, you know who sold her out on her location? The Delphins. Um, and so them being right there with her, I mean, I don't blame her for like walking right off after she's introduced. She basically makes an excuse and she's like, "Yeah, I got to go back to battle. Bye."
Yeah.
Because she doesn't really want to be hanging around for this really weird family reunion.
Yeah, it is. I thought it was interesting to show like the kind of like how in Battle of the Labyrinth when they run into Hera and Percy brings up Thalia, and he thinks afterwards, like, was Hera mad because I brought Thalia up? Is like just like that more real way of thinking about, like, yeah, these demigods existing is because they cheated on their spouses. And so
Yes.
me standing here is just reminding her that Poseidon was with my mom. What do I do? He doesn't know what
Yeah,
to do.
exactly. Well, he's being it's like I'm daddy's other family, but I'm being
Mm-hmm.
introduced to his real family. Um
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, Amphitrite, and then he finds out that he was with Triton, that that's his other son. Um and Triton right away is like very much giving jealousy, I'm threatened by you vibes, because he's like, I'm the crown prince, by the way. And with Triton, I couldn't find much in his mythology. Oh, before I move on from Amphitrite, one Roman source basically conflated the Scylla story. So it was her, but
Mm.
she was jealous because Poseidon wanted Scylla.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That was a weird random Roman source that said that.
Mm-hmm.
With Triton, he's kind of so blah blah that they basically call all mer people Tritons. And so
Okay.
he doesn't really have too much. It's just he's known to be one of the, like actual, like, I don't want to say real children because they're all real children, but like one of the royal children, like
Mm-hmm.
one of the legitimate guy. I hate the wording that you have to use with shit like that, but
Mm-hmm. I will say
there's
too,
others
with
too.
with Poseidon's like royal family, I guess. I don't know what to call them, but this is like a whole fandom thing. That our friend Sophia writes a lot of fan fiction about them, and there's a ton of fan fiction. They
Hmm.
call it C fam for C family, and there's
Hmm.
a lot of fan fiction about them getting to know Percy, them like rewriting the story if they could have been involved with Percy and Sally from the beginning, like how if things would have gone differently and been easier for him if they had them like helping them instead of them hating him and not helping him at all. It's really interesting. I don't read any of it because I don't like Poseidon.
Yeah,
I don't like any of the gods, but it is really interesting to see like there's like a whole huge part of the fandom that writes fan fiction a lot about that idea. And that's where this kind of stuff comes from. I don't remember if Triton is nicer to Percy by the end of this book, or if that happens in like future books, or if that's just purely like a fan thing that they because there's a lot of stories of Triton eventually being a lot nicer to Percy, and I don't remember if that actually happens in the actual books or not. But
hmm,
yeah, that is like a fandom thing that's been like it's one of those areas that there isn't too much in the actual books, and so we can just like explore and do whatever we want with these characters.
yeah. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, so they were mentioned in, I want to believe, Triton was in Theseus's story somewhere, helps him out,
Hmm.
and then Amphitrite in Jason's story, or it might be Theseus as well. But it's so blah blah that it's like I didn't really, like, there's nothing major to the story, nothing meaty. It's just like, oh, they sometimes help heroes.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, Triton is very much posturing with Percy here, is what I noticed. Like, I'm the crown
Yeah.
prince. I'm the one who gets to go into battle. And like, just like Tyson, Percy's like, put me in battle, Dad. Like, I'm here. Might
Hmm.
as well do something. And he's like, no, you don't get to. But Triton, go out into battle. I will see you to the front line, father. Don't worry, I will not fail. And then he nods to Tyson, which I was like, okay, well, at least he respects Tyson.
Yeah, he's nice to Tyson at least. It
Yeah.
should be illegal to not be nice to
But
Tyson.
it's probably also because he's not threatened by him.
Yeah, he's a Cyclops. He's not like
Yeah.
another son of Poseidon in the way that he could like try to usurp him, even though Percy doesn't want anything to do with that.
Yeah, so, let's see, the battle against Oceanus is going poorly, is what Poseidon tells him about.
Hmm.
Um, and what Poseidon says is he was neutral in the first war of the gods and titans, but Kronos convinced him to fight. This is not a good sign. Oceanus would not commit unless he was sure he could pick the winning side. Um, and so Percy just makes a joke. He looks stupid. I mean, who wants to fight with a snake? And Tyson says, Daddy will tie it in knots. And Poseidon just like smiles and he's like, I appreciate your faith. But yeah, he's talking about how he's getting tired in the battle too because the sea monsters that are coming about are so ancient that he had forgotten about them.
Hmm.
Um, they see Briarees come in fighting something. It's like throwing around a snake thingy. Um, and Briarees has been a big help to them, but of course they're down to 100-hander because the other two let themselves kind of disappear. Um, let's see. And while they're down there, also, Percy takes note of the fact that there are casualties happening with these mermen that are
Hmm.
like fighting with his dad. And starts realizing like it's not just Charlie. It's not just Beckendorf. Like it's been other people.
Hmm.
Let's see. So Percy ends up having to tell his dad what happened. Um, he of course is also he shares with his dad like being sad about Beckendorf. His dad replies, Beckendorf chose a heroic death. You bear no blame for that. Kronos' army will be in disarray. Many were destroyed. Basically, reassuring him, like, his death wasn't for nothing. It did something good, and it's not your fault in its own weird way. Um, and let's see. There were only a few demigod warriors aboard the ship, and they all chose to battle for Kronos. Perhaps some heeded your warning and escaped. If they did not, they chose their path, is another thing that he says.
Percy doesn't agree with that.
Yeah, he says Percy right away is they were brainwashed, now they're dead, and Kronos is still alive. That's supposed to make me feel better. Um,
Every
and
like abused kid thing. The
yeah,
like abuser always gets away with everything, and you're just like, and their victims are just like suffering.
and Tyson picking up on the fact that Percy's like, okay, this hurt other demigods and it didn't even kill Kronos. He's like, not your fault, brother. Kronos does not explode good. Next time we will use a big stick. It's just so cute. Um, and so Poseidon basically reassures him again. Beckendorf's sacrifice wasn't in vain. We've scattered the invasion force because they were counting on that ship.
Yeah.
So,
One thing with this
yeah,
part too, I wanted to make sure to bring up because we were talking about Achilles as the hero of this book,
yes,
and this is like the first Achilles Patroclus thing of the book, and this is like showing that Percy is not Achilles at all because his response to Beckendorf sacrificing himself is just being upset that he had to sacrifice himself at all. He's upset that the kids on the ship died when they were victims.
yeah,
Achilles is upset in the Iliad that Patroclus dies just because he's like, how dare you? Like, how dare you let him go out there and like do this for me? Like, he's like almost like offended that they let him do that where he ended up dying and then immediately goes out to get like vicious like revenge.
yes,
And Percy's response instead is just like taking responsibility even though it's not actually his. He still takes it anyway. And it feels that responsibility because he's like those kids and him should be alive, not me. And like they
mm,
should still be here and it didn't even do anything. He like has like the correct sort of outlook on it all that he's not somebody that's just going to go craning off to get like revenge or
yeah,
anything like that. And this is like kind of showing like his response to this stuff of like thinking about the people that died. One of the things that's so frustrating about Achilles and the Iliad is that he doesn't really care about Patroclus. Like that's why I think the whole thing about them being a big romance is kind of I don't know what to think about that because he makes it about himself. He's like making it all about him, like about how sad he is that Patroclus died. He's not thinking about how Patroclus would feel or that his life ended. Like the focus isn't actually on the person that died. The focus more is on him because he's like now the dangerous one. going around hurting people and causing all of these problems. And so it's like you almost like forget really, like there's so many stories like that happen in like the news and stuff. Like we were just talking about one, oh, the baby, the baby that was in the news that
Yeah.
whose parents,
Emmanuel, I forget what the last name is. I think it starts
yeah,
with an
the
H.
little sweet little baby, that the 7-month-old baby whose parents definitely killed him and did a really racist version of trafficking. As soon as they said the trafficking thing, I'm like, that doesn't happen. That's not actually real. So this can't possibly be real. But like that's a good example of this sort of idea of that they made that whole thing like a circus and about them, because it was like people knew obviously that something was wrong, and people are like forgetting about this baby. They're not really talking about that this tiny little baby is now dead. That's like every true crime case ever, that usually the victim, like in like another version of that, is like Amanda Knox. Like nobody remembers Meredith Kirchner, and I feel bad for her family because whenever there's a documentary about Amanda Knox, they like pop up being like, does anyone care about our daughter? She was murdered, and nobody remembers her because they remember Amanda instead. And that's what Achilles does, and that's also what like people who act like Achilles would do. But instead, Percy's just thinking about the people who died and like how unfair it is that they died, and everything is just going to keep going as if they were never even here.
Yeah.
He's not the one that's gonna like do that.
Yeah, yeah. So, Poseidon says that at least that gives the Olympians other time, the fact that they scattered the invasion to deal with bigger problems. And,
Hmm.
um, anyways, Poseidon then starts talking about returning him to camp, telling Percy, you can't stay here, you gotta go, your job's elsewhere. Um, Tyson sticks up for Percy first. He says, Daddy, Percy can fight with a sword, he's good. And let's see, kind of similar to, like let Tyson fight kind of thing. But
Hmm.
um let's see. He also gets told by his dad, tell Chiron it's time. You must hear the prophecy, the entire prophecy. First he says, what if this is the decision, staying here to fight or leaving? What if I leave you? And um he says, no, you got to go back. Your final decision isn't here.
I like
Um
that part just because that is, I remember saying
yeah.
that like when we first talked about the prophecy, how the prophecy is so like vague that it's just like maddening if you really if when he's thinking about it, because a choice can be literally anything. And now that it's about to happen, it's like how can he has to be like overthinking every single decision that he makes now that his birthday is only a couple days away. It's like, what if it's
Yeah.
this and I do the wrong thing? What if it's that? What if I was supposed to save Charlie? What if I was supposed to do this or that? And it's just like, oh my god, like
Yeah.
that will make anyone like feel like they're losing it, overthinking every single thing. But how could he not be overthinking it knowing that it's about to happen?
Exactly. So, this is where Tyson gets dismissed to the armory, even though he wants to fight. This is where what you said happens, where he says you should let him fight. He hates being stuck in the armory. Can't you tell? Poseidon shook his head. It is bad enough I must send you into danger. Tyson is too young. I must protect him. You should trust him, I said, not try to protect him. Poseidon's eyes flared. I thought I'd gone too far, but then he looked down at the mosaic and his shoulders sagged. So basically, just kind of like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, so Percy is still apprehensive to leave. He's scared that he's gonna leave and the entire kingdom's gonna collapse because of how bad things are down there. But Poseidon's like, I'm gonna hold things down. Just go. Like they need you. And Percy ends up sending himself out. Let's see, and he sees the flashes of the fighting as he leaves.
Yeah.
Um,
It's one of those things like he didn't know that any of that was that bad. And
yeah,
now that he does, it's like hard to like forget and just keep going, even if you can't physically see it, knowing that all of that is happening. Well, they're just on land and have no idea.
yeah. So, chapter 3 is I get a sneak peek at my death. So he pulls up to camp and he knows that they're going to recognize him right away because he's basically zooming onto shore with his water
Mhm.
powers. And they of course are going to realize right away it's just him. Like
Yeah.
that Beckendorf is not with him. So it's the Stoll brothers who are on patrol at the moment when it happens. Travis that sees him. It's Connor that sees him. What happened? Where's Beckendorf? And then it says, he saw my expression and his smile melted. Oh, no. Poor Selena, holy Zeus, when she finds out. And then everybody else starts swarming. It's like, oh, Percy's back, Percy's back. And so he has to kind of have this conversation too many times, all at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, One thing that he notices too while he's in this kind of like reintroduction into camp that we get for this beginning of the book. In some ways, the camp hadn't changed, but you couldn't see the war by looking at the buildings or fields. You could see it in the faces of the demigods and the satyrs and the naiads coming up the hill. There weren't as many at camp as 4 summers ago. Some had left and never come back. Some had died fighting. Others, we tried not to talk about them, had gone over to the enemy. The ones who were still here were battle hardened and weary. So everything that is happening in the war, although they're in a very protected and like controlled space, all of them are showing it, and people are coming and leaving. They even say at this point that the before people could only leave if they got a prophecy, and now that's just done away with. That rule is no
Mhm.
more
Now
because
they have
people
to
are
leave all the
needed.
time for all these really
Yeah,
dangerous missions they're all going on. Yeah, I liked that part where he talks about thinking about like what camp looked like when he first got there when he was a little kid and
hmm,
how everything has become so much harder now.
yeah. So eventually, the moment that we're all dreading happens, and
Yeah.
Selena pushes her way to the front of the crowd.
Oh, one part about
Yeah.
this that also shows like God for like Percy's perspective is he says something like I just stayed where I was and just waited for them to come to me instead of coming to them because
Yes.
he's like I don't want to have to do this and so I'm just going to stay here and knowing that when everybody gets over here I'm going to like ruin everything. That they're
Yeah.
not going to be happy to see me anymore. And I was just like, "Oh god."
So Selena, pushes her way to the front, and she says, "Where's Charlie?" Percy can't do anything except glance at Chiron, and Chiron starts up, "Selena, my dear, let's go talk about this at the big house." And she, of course, knows what that means. So she
Yeah.
starts scream crying, and it's like this is where it starts hitting everybody, it feels like, because what he says is with Beckendorf gone, it felt like somebody had stolen the anchor for the entire camp.
Mhm.
So Clarice eventually makes her way forward. She puts an arm around Selena and she says, "Come on, let's go to the big house. I'll make you some hot chocolate." And Selena is like, he talks about how they have this strange relationship that developed over the last summer. Ever since Selena had given Clarice advice about her first boyfriend, she decided she was going to be Selena's personal bodyguard. So they have this very, very close friendship because she's let herself be vulnerable with Selena, and Selena now is just like, just her friend. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, it's sweet that she's the one that ends up getting her like to calm down and go to the big house. Um, let's see. Annabeth eventually shows up. "I'm glad you're not dead, seaweed brain. Thanks, me too." Um, and so Percy eventually has to go through this story one more time. He also goes through the story about his dream that he saw with the other Titans. Um, and then they decide
Oh
they're
wait,
going to,
the one thing I remember from this part is that
yeah.
the first thing that Annabeth asks is she starts asking about Luke, and I was like, I will like
Oh,
jump
yeah.
off of a cliff or something. That the first thing she asks about is Luke, and he just cuts it off saying he's not dead.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, this part is just awful that he. I like the fact that Rick added in a part of Percy saying like I don't want to tell this story again.
Yeah.
But I have to, and I'm just like counting all the different like traumatic things that have already happened to him, and it's chapter 3 because
Yeah.
it is a really traumatic thing to have to keep retelling a story of something really awful that happened to you. Oh God.
So they do make their way to the big house after this because the thing that Percy kind of ends with is my father says it's time I got to learn the entire prophecy.
Hmm.
And so they go up to the attic of the big house where there's a bunch of souvenirs. The attic, they go to the mummy, and the mummy that usually gives them the oracles. Um, Basically, Chiron can't go up with them. Annabeth goes, and she tells the oracle, it's time at hand to ask for the great prophecy. Of course, nothing happens because it's not like a quest prophecy, but instead she just opens what looks like a medicine pouch cord on her neck that
Hmm.
has a little piece of parchment paper in it. And that has the written down prophecy. They decide they're not going to read it up there with the mummy. They're going to go down and read it later with everybody else. So the senior counselors gather. We have Clarice. We have Michael Yu, who took over for Lee Fletcher, who died in battle last summer. The Stoll brothers, Pollux from the Dionysus cabin, Katie Gardner from Demeter, Jake Mason, the hastily appointed new counselor from Hephaestus, and
Hmm.
Selena is there even though she probably shouldn't be because of how fresh that news is.
Yeah.
But she's sitting there with her untouched hot chocolate at this point.
Hmm.
Um, The thing that happens right away in this meeting, though, is Clarice gets into an argument, and I ended up sending Shannon this because I just like had to laugh at myself. I write in all my books, so I have notes in here that are from the first time I read this in 2009, and I was reading this. Clarice, her argument with Michael Yu is about she deserves something more than he does, and let's see, well, they didn't say what it was, right?
Mm-mm.
Um, Does my cabin get what we want or not? Chiron says, my dear, as I've already explained, Michael is correct. Apollo's cabin has the best claim. Besides, we have more important matters. So there's some sort of dispute over whether or not her or the Ares or the Apollo cabin deserves something more. And she has not been participating in meetings, and she she basically kind of storms out after this. Um,
Yeah, I
so
liked
here,
one thing I liked from this part is that
yeah,
when they walk in with them arguing about this, that Percy just yells at them. Like Percy doesn't really yell like that, but he yells at them. It's just like, what are you doing? Like,
yeah,
why are you
because they're
arguing
doing it right in
about?
front of Selena.
Yeah, like you're doing this in front of Selena right after Charlie died. What are you doing? Generally, what are you doing? And that's like he's not the type to yell, and so that makes
Yes.
them all like shut the hell up for a second and
Yeah.
and like get their stuff together, and for Chiron to like say that, and but it is just the most ridiculous thing that she's arguing with them about something right now. Well, she says that
Yes.
she's trying to help Selena, and I'm like, are you sure about that?
Okay, so the thing that I said Shannon though was it was here where it was like she yells at Michael. She's like, "We're just supposed to show up and fight when you need us and not complain." I was like, "Oh, this is the Achilles metaphor happening right here."
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you turn the page, and Clarice says, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get into this when you've just lost. Anyway, I apologize to you, no one else. All of you can fight this war without Ares. Until I get satisfaction, no one in my cabin is lifting a finger to help. Have fun dying. And that's where I wrote it in 2009 of like, that's the Achilles. But like, yeah, all of that is supposed to be like our opening of the Iliad almost.
Yeah.
Um,
And I had to like bring that like talk about that because I said last time that Achilles no, that Clarice and Selena vaguely remind me of our friendship in that way. Like, yes, I am like your guard dog, because I saw you being sad about your mom once, and somebody tried to question you about that. That's a weird crypto influencer in England, and I told them to go
Yeah.
fuck themselves. But that's like where that ends because this is ridiculous. Like just the whole idea of I'm just like, what are you doing? Like you're saying that she's like really that you want to protect her and that you're and I'm saying this as me, somebody
Yeah.
who's very like that about their friends and like to the point that like people who don't even super know me super well, like people who just know me, from the videos that I make, but we haven't really talked too much like one on one. They will sometimes send me videos that they want me to react to because they know that I can like put somebody in their place better
Yeah.
than they can, and they'll tell me like you just like word like say things in a way that is better than how I could put it. And so I'm like that's I do that and I like that. Like now that I've worked through like the I used to be terrified of being angry. Now that I'm not terrified of that anymore, it's fun to be able to do stuff like that and not be like scared. It feels good to be able to have like that kind of role for people because I'm like, yeah, use me. Like I'll say stuff to people if you're worried that it's not going to come out the right way. I know how to say this kind of thing. But so like especially for somebody like me that knows what it's like to be that sort of person, I'm like, what do you no, this is like such the wrong thing to like put your stupid bullshit first, like whatever it is,
Hmm.
in that sort of like position. That's just so wrong to put like how you feel over especially over her. um
Yeah.
right now after she just lost Charlie, like what the heck, she's doing like the dissociation like 1,000 mile stare because
Yeah.
when something like that happens you just that's the best you can do in a situation like that. But it's just like this is so not the right time, and it's just the idea that she even thought that that was okay to do, that I'm like, it's hard for me to believe that you actually care that much about Selena, because if you did, you
Yeah.
wouldn't even go there. Like, what? That's just so selfish. Like, I'm just thinking about like how when you come to me and tell me like things that you're upset about, if I suddenly was just like, anyway, what about me?
Yeah.
It's just
Well, and yeah, that's the Achilles of it all is it's showing that that anger, that pride comes first. And
yeah. And I
yeah.
will say that I can like it makes so I was when this came up I was thinking about it and I was like there is usually like a demigod in the books that kind of play the role of like whatever hero in in like the book that he's covering too. Like a lot of them actually it makes sense for it to be Annabeth.
Yeah.
Like she kind of is like the Perseus sort of role of like wanting to accept the god's gifts in like the first book. It's her kind of a little bit with how she is with like the sirens, thinking that she can like see what the sirens would show her and just be like intellectual about it and not try to like drown herself and also Percy because of what she sees. Is
Hmm.
that feels like Odysseus too. And then in Titan's Curse, I would say that's more like Thalia, who's like Heracles, like just not really thinking about how she is making other people feel and just kind of using whatever, and then joins the hunters and like pieces out on everybody at the end of the book. The fourth book is also kind of Annabeth with how she keeps thinking she can outthink like the maze, even though she never can.
Yeah.
Um, but like, and it makes sense if you're going to do like have like a Achilles thing with one of the other demigods to like show the way that Percy handles it and then the way that they handle it. I feel like
Yeah.
it has to be an Aries kid because they just have like that sort of pride. Like that's the whole reason why Clarice in the first book didn't like Percy, is because she felt like he was like showing her up somehow by beating the Minotaur when he was a tiny
Yeah.
little baby. Because their role is they're like the brawn of like the fight. They're like the
Yeah.
ones, and I can see how she might like get upset by that, of this like general idea of like they always are called into like these big battles and have to do all the physical stuff, because that's just kind of like their role. And so if that is like a very dangerous thing that they're doing a lot right now. And so I could see her being upset by like feeling like they're just like going out there and dying or in these serious situations and nobody's taking it seriously. But but like reacting this way is definitely not the way to do it.
Yeah.
like work through those, like how you feel about the fact that you keep having to go out there and do these dangerous things without without having to like without saying that you're not going to help while everybody is like quite literally everybody is dying every single day. It's like, yeah, this is like the one time of life where you're supposed to go out there and do really dangerous things and not think about like really what you're doing because they don't really have a choice right now.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's see. She storms out. Chiron says her pride has been wounded. She'll calm down eventually. And Annabeth shoots a wait, so Percy looks at Annabeth, she mouths the words, "I'll tell you later."
Hmm.
Um and so Percy starts reading the prophecy out loud. I have to include his misreading here because I love that Rick gives us that levity of
Yeah.
the half-blood of the eldest dogs. Percy, Annabeth interrupted. That's gods, not dogs. So the half-blood of the eldest gods shall reach 16 against all odds, and see the world in endless sleep. A hero's soul cursed blade shall reap. A single choice shall end his days. Olympus preserve, to preserve or raise. And so we basically find out in this prophecy he's going to die. A choice shall end his days. Um,
And he'll be stabbed to death.
yes, yeah, a cursed blade. But here's the thing: is we know that these prophecies can be speaking of more than one person, and
Hmm.
for whatever reason, all of us all along have been counting on this prophecy just speaking about Percy,
Hmm.
and like that doesn't necessarily have to be true for this one, and it doesn't end up being true. But he's definitely the half blood of the eldest gods will reach 16 against all odds.
Yeah.
Like that, of
And
course.
and you can see why everybody is scared that it's Percy or that the prophecy kid is the same person that also it dies with the blade because it's like, yeah, wouldn't they be like wouldn't the prophecy be about them
Yeah.
if they are the ones that like, and there is so many stories in Greek mythology of people like sacrificing themselves that way for like the good of other people. And
Hmm.
so I can see why like if I was scared, I was absolutely terrified that it was going to be him. And I was like, and I remember reading this book that would like keep popping up in my mind and I was like, I refuse to believe that Rick Riordan would make me love this character this much and have me read 5 books of this series just to kill him at the end of it. I refuse to believe that this is like what this series of books is going to do to me. And that was part of why I read it all in one sitting because I just had to know if Percy was okay at the end of it, and he ends up being okay. But it is a very scary thing to hear, and that Annabeth has had that in her mind about him the entire time they've known each other because she read the prophecy when she was 10 for the first time. And
Hmm.
so ever since they met, she's had it in the back of her mind that it could be that if he is the prophecy kid, which he very quickly seems to be, that it means that he might die. And that just makes everything really hard.
Yeah.
We
Like,
know since we read these books before that
yeah.
it's not
It's not
him,
all
but
him. Yeah.
they don't know that, and Percy himself and anyone else around who's hearing this, they don't know that it's him. They just would assume that it would be him because why else? What else? Like, wouldn't they believe? Like, they definitely wouldn't think that Luke would be the one to do it to himself. They would think that he would have to be the one to kill him, and that makes sense because Luke is giving zero indication that he would allow somebody to kill him
Yeah.
right now. I will say this part I like laughed, even though this is not funny at all. I laughed just because of who I am as a person that like literally like I don't know, 2 or 3 days ago, Mandy and I were talking about like death and stuff, and I
Hmm.
literally verbatim said out loud to you, death has never bothered me, or like I don't think about it that much because there's a million different ways to die, and so why bother thinking about it that much? Because I can't control it. And then Percy literally says the exact same thing, and I was
Yeah.
like, what
It
the
just keeps happening.
I was like, that is so funny. I like just started laughing when he was just like, well, I can't, if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die. I'm not gonna like think about it too much, and just like tries to move on from it while everybody's scared of how he's gonna respond. And I was just like, oh, that's the funniest thing ever. I like know that he said that, but it wasn't when I was talking to you about that, that was not in my mind at all. That's generally just how I've thought like about that kind of stuff since I was a kid. I didn't remember that. I didn't remember that scene in that moment at all. And it was just so funny to hear him say that. And I was just like, what the fuck? And I was like, I know I'm like Percy, but it's hilarious when he says things that I have actually said that I'm just like, okay. I mean, that is how I think, but that's just really funny when you run into people that are exactly like him and we just say stuff like that. And we're like, yeah, anyway, like, moving
Yeah.
on.
So the end of that prophecy, though, the Olympus to preserve or raise, Raze, is what kind of wakes Selena up out of her
Hmm.
dissociation because everyone's like, wait, raise? Because they're thinking Raise, and she's like, no, no, it means destroy. And so they start arguing about the prophecy, and that's when Percy, as you said, I don't need time to think about it. If I die, I die. I can't worry about that, right?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but then they start talking about the spy again. And so Connor says, we've suspected there might be a spy for years. Somebody kept passing information to Luke, like the location of the Golden Fleece a couple years ago. It must be somebody who knew him well. Maybe subconsciously he glanced at Annabeth. She'd known Luke better than anyone, of course, but Connor looked away quickly. I mean, it could be anybody. Yeah. But then it gets better because yes, Katie Gardner frowned at the Stoll brothers. She just liked them ever since they decorated the grass roof of the Demeter cabin with chocolate Easter bunnies, like one of Luke's siblings. So
Hmm.
like now they're all accusing each other, which like of course the other side would just eat up that they're like arguing over. No, you're the spy because that's just gonna waste more time on their end.
Yeah. And it is
Um,
like one of those things that just makes you. This is why I'm excited for this storyline in the TV show. And I
yes.
feel like the way that they did the whole like who is the betrayer storyline in the first season and ended up being Luke. But you think that it could be anyone, especially Annabeth in the first season.
Hmm.
It sets that up really well for them to bring that in some way. I hope it is somehow in season two, but if it's not, it's probably going to be in season three or something. But I would imagine that the idea that he somehow, well, because when they go in the Princess Andromeda the first time, he knows everything about camp and is like and literally like recites the coordinates for where the golden fleece is, and they're like, how the heck do you know about any of this stuff? And so I'm sure they're going to bring it up. And it is one of those things that I hope they go into a little bit more in the show to like where they it just makes you question everybody around you in a way of like it's hard to you don't want to distrust these people, but you have to know that it has to be somebody that is telling him this stuff. I
Yeah.
thought that it was really funny that Connor looks ready in a bed because I was remembering how, like, when I read this book for the first time, I read the Last Olympian for the first time in like 2011, I think it was. When I read the Lightning Thief in 2010. I started reading the series in 2010 when the movie actually came out. I saw people talking about how they hated the movie, and it made me want to like I wanted to watch the movie, and so I wanted to read the books first, and then I never watched the movie because I just ended up liking the books more, and I heard that the movie was really bad, so I just never watched it. But I wanted to take a while to finish the series, which for me is like a year. I read it in between when I had because I back then I was still in college, and so I like read it between like school breaks and stuff. And when I finally read it in 2011, I thought that Annabeth was the spy.
Yeah.
And when I read, it's like me and Walker so far. They're the only ones paranoid enough, apparently, to think that Annabeth was the spy. But either way, like during this scene when I was reading this book for the first time, I didn't want her to be in like this room, like hearing everybody's plans. And as this book goes along until they reveal who it is, I didn't want her to be in there because I was convinced that she was telling Luke everything. And I honestly think that Rick might have wrote it that way because it is like she is kind of like an obvious choice to think that Luke would have her doing that kind of stuff. Because she does do whatever Luke wants her to do. She
Yeah.
just like he can play her so well in ways that nobody else would ever be able to do anything like that with her. But I when I was rereading that scene, I was just remembering how back then I didn't want Percy to like tell her anything. I didn't want her to even be in the room when they're planning stuff. I didn't want her I like remember every time he would have a scene where he's talking to her, I would be telling like thinking in my head like don't tell her anything because I
Hmm.
was like completely convinced that she was the one that was telling everybody things. And I was really surprised that it was Selena and that it wasn't her at all. I was really
Yeah.
relieved and was okay then with them, eventually getting together because I could tell the book wanted me to want that. And as soon as I realized she wasn't it, then I was okay with it. But it was just interesting reading like this scene again, remembering how I felt the first time and
Hmm.
that like feeling completely different about it now knowing like how it actually happens. But I still always defend the fact that it made sense to me at the time.
Yeah.
And like granted a lot of that is probably from like extreme betrayal trauma but in my
Yeah.
own life, but still it made
It
sense
does
to
make
me.
sense. Yeah, I can see how it makes sense. Um, so here's where the Iris message part comes in. So it's at this point where they're talking about, looking for the spy, that Chiron says, it's time to catch Percy up because they have a battalion stuff that's been going on over the summer. And so they use a hot plate that's sitting in this like area, and he like puts water on it, uses the steam to send out an Iris message, and it shows a image of Mount St. Helens. Um, Basically, like they're watching a newscast of it almost. It says even
Hmm.
larger than last year's eruption, and geologists warn the mountain may not be done. So we know that that was where Typhon was coming out of. Um, let's see. And that's what he realizes at that moment. It's Typhon. So Typhon is father of monsters in the same way Echidna is mother of monsters. In fact, they created them. Um, he fought Zeus for rule of the cosmos at one point and gets thunderbolted basically into Tartarus. And he's described as, like he has a snaky appearance. Like usually there's multiple snakes involved, um, kind of represented by a hurricane. Like that's what to think of him as when it comes to natural forces. So when Percy's like, it's him, Typhon, I was seriously hoping Chiron would say something like, no, that's our huge friend Leroy. He's gonna help us. But no such luck. He simply nodded. And so all of the gods are basically away fighting Typhon now. And
Yeah.
so Percy, of course, is thinking, like, wait, all of the gods are fighting him? Olympus, hello. Like, what's
Yeah.
going on here? And starts saying, we have to defend Olympus. Kronos has another attack planned. Um, and let's see. Um, he did. Travis Stoll reminded me, but you sunk his ship. Everyone was looking at me. They wanted some good news. They wanted to believe that at least I'd given them a little bit of hope. And basically, he's afraid to say in front of Selena at this point because they're all like, "Oh, we already stopped that other plan." He doesn't want to say in front of her like, "No, we didn't. They just slowed him down because Selena's still grieving Beckendorf." He says,
Hmm.
"Maybe you're right," instead. And let's see. They basically end the meeting there, but Percy in his mind is like, can things get any worse? Let's see. Let me start his rant here that he goes on in his
Hmm.
head. I tried to imagine how things could get much worse. The gods were in the Midwest fighting a huge monster that had almost defeated them once before. Poseidon was under siege and losing a war against the sea titan Oceanus. Kronos was still out there somewhere. Olympus was virtually undefended. The demigods of Camp Half Blood were on our own with a spy in our midst. Oh, and according to an ancient prophecy, I was going to die when I turned 16, which happened to be in 5 days, the exact time that typhoon was supposed to hit New York. Almost forgot about that. So
Yeah.
basically, everything is happening all at once, and that's where the War Council adjourns.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was intense first 3 chapters.
Mhm.
Um, Stakes, as you said, get shown right away with Beckendorf, and it's not going to slow down. We have mer people dying, we have demigods dying, we have probably mortals dying in some of these natural disaster things that are happening.
Mhm.
Like, it's really serious now. And so, yeah, like it's already a huge death toll if we're counting the non-named characters, but even just in
Mhm.
named characters, it's a weighty death toll.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk about Selena since we know what's going on with her before that they haven't introduced in the story yet.
Yeah.
Of just like I don't even this is why I made that video of me talking about what happens to Selena without saying that it was her when we were reading Battle of the Labyrinth, and it was like a 7 minute long video, and it got like over 1,000 views and like way longer watch time than normal because people just wanted to
Yeah.
like listen to me talk about how traumatizing that whole how this ends is. But it is just one of those things that I don't know how there's anybody like alive who reads these books who defends Luke when you think about Selena
Yeah.
ever. Like
Like her
she is so,
boyfriend literally just died
and
because of
like
her actions.
you have to like think about how abusive, like manipulative, grooming sort of assholes like Luke are. She's surprised. So like she's surprised. We know that she is the mole, right? We also
Yes.
saw Luke slash Kronos and the sort of powers that she has. So like don't even go there with like trying to say that like she should have somehow not given him that information. Like she's talking to fucking Kronos at this point. Do you really think she had the choice to tell him no? Like I really don't think so. I really don't think that there was a way like Kronos probably would have looked like Luke the whole time and sounded like him just to get her to, you know, give him what he
Yeah.
needed. But there's no way that she could have actually told him no. There's no way she could have told him no at any point because of what he said. Like she goes like when this gets revealed in this book, she talks about it that Luke told her from the beginning when she was 13 years old that if she told him things that was going on at camp, he would kill less people. And he was lying to her.
Yeah.
But still, like, you can't, like, what is she supposed to do? Like, what is, especially when she's a kid, but when you're anybody, what are you supposed to do in that situation? You want to believe that that person won't actually, that they're actually telling the truth because you don't want the people that you care about to die. And so what else is she supposed to think but that? And so in this sort of part it's like thinking about how because she's surprised that Charlie died, she's surprised that that happened. And so Luke had to have told her that if he was the one that ended up doing this mission, which she would have told probably would have told them that it was gonna who it would likely would have been. um he had to have told her that like, oh, I won't hurt him,
Yeah.
I'll let him come back, because when she realizes that he's not there and she's immediately just like no no no, and like he had to have promised that he wouldn't hurt Charlie in order to get her to tell him this stuff. And that is fucking disgusting. But
Yes.
that is like the only option because she is surprised.
Hmm.
And so the fact that she is like she's not an idiot. She's not like knowing that her boyfriend is going to his death and not saying something. If she knew that if she actually thought that he was going to die when they went to that ship, She would have tried to stop him. She would have tried to warn him. She would have done something else. Um,
Mhm.
like even when you're being groomed and manipulated by somebody like what's happening with Luke, you still try to do those things. And so the fact that she didn't means that he must have said something to her to make her think that he would be fine, that he wouldn't, that Kronos wouldn't kill him, that maybe he would take him prisoner, or he would let him leave at least. And so the fact that he didn't and instead died when he was there is even worse, but is generally like the worst thing you can possibly imagine, um, of what she's going through, because what else was she supposed to do? Like
Yeah.
this is like a completely like there's no good way to figure this situation out. There's no like there's no like good there's no and like that's why it's a good story about grooming, is that especially when it's like an older guy that's grooming a younger person, or I don't want to do genders, and when it's an older person that's grooming somebody that's younger, um,
Mhm.
one of those things that bothers me is how people, when people talk to people that have gone through that, they talk to them as if like, oh, you should have just like done this one thing or that one thing, as if they made like one decision or said one thing that they somehow magically could have gotten out of that situation just fine, everything would have been like super honky dory, or they just act like, oh, I never would, um, like I never would have, like done that or whatever. And
Mhm.
so that kind of stuff bothers me, of how, because it's not that easy. And that's why I like this storyline, even though it's fucking brutal. I like the storyline with Selena because it just shows that there really is no clear way to get out of this situation, which is why all the responsibility is on Luke, because he's the one that put her in that in the first place, knowing that he was trapping her into something, and she didn't realize that. She probably didn't even realize that it was going to last this long. She probably just thought that he was helping her for now, but he would come back. She likely didn't even realize when she was 13, because she was 13.
Mhm.
In like the second book, when this stuff first started, that it was going to keep going like this and keep getting worse. And it is one of those things that abusive people like that make you feel like you're responsible for what's going on. And I'm very sure he told her that she was like responsible for some of this stuff going on, which means that like right now she thinks that it's her fault. Um, Partly that Charlie's dead.
Yeah, something
And
she
it's
didn't do right or something. That was our reading for today. We're gonna keep the Wednesday episode for this week. My as my semester picks up, we might do away with a Wednesday episode, just depending on how my school load ends up going. But
mm-hmm,
for now, we can keep it. I'm still in the intro. Don't have too much going on.
that'll be fine.
Yeah, so we'll come with you guys, probably show news. Feels like stuff's happening, so I'm sure something will happen between now and then.
Stuff's always happening.
Yeah.
There's always something somewhere somebody's talking about that annoys me or you or both of us.
Yeah, I mean, part of me wants to talk about our big revelation with like a former hater, but I don't know.
Oh
We'll
yeah,
we'll talk more about that. We'll talk more about that offline, but maybe we can talk about
we can
just
talk about
how that's
that
worked
because
out.
that was really funny.
Yeah, but it'll probably be another random episode again this
Hmm.
Wednesday. So we'll see you guys for Wednesday. We'll continue reading Percy Jackson on next Monday, but we'll see you guys for Wednesday.